So, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the social CRM that Karl-Heinz has just been talking about, and remembering that this whole event today is called the end of marketing as we know it, we have another the end of, and the end of business as usual is Brian Solis's new book. And if you're lucky, maybe this afternoon we've got it here, and you can not only just have a sneak view at it, but you can also take it along. But what is better than to have the person here himself, so you can actually hear it from the horse's mouth, that we have a new generation, not the generation Y, those of our sons, but the generation C, the changed consumer. Brian, I think I've rolled out the red carpet, so please come up to the stage and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Solis.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Well, Karl-Heinz, I must say that it's hard for me to sit through someone else's speech, but you did a wonderful job. You really made the case to show us what's changing today. And what I would like to do is spend some time with you to show you how to change. I think you'll hear more often than not the need to. It's what we do when we leave this conference that matters. It's how we are measured in terms of success. I've been talking about social media since the beginning. Do you realize the first reference of it online is about 2005? Here we are, 7 years later, still wondering whether or not this social media thing is going to stick around. I talk to executives every day. My job is actually not so much social media as much as it is in change management. And at the end of the day, that really is what we're all doing. Social media is just the latest tool and channel for us to learn about our customers, to improve our customer relationships. When we think about what's at the center of all of this, it is, as Karl-Heinz had said, it's information. Information is the greatest currency that exists in our planet today because we can do so much with it. Big data is one of the biggest trends in the world, along with social and mobile and local. But big data is only one side of the equation. On the other side is you. I refer to this as the human algorithm, the ability for us as human beings to take all of this information and do something with it. And do something with it is where our story begins today. What do I mean by do something with it? Meaning that you can only apply that information to change, to better serve customers, to treat them like the king or queen that they are, only if you want to. It's a difference. We have to have the ability to change inside the organization in order to apply big data to improve relationships. We have to want to improve relationships. We have to believe that the state of relationships as it exists today is not good enough. Relevance. That is probably one of the most important words in social media today. The other is resonance. Relevance is the competition for attention, loyalty, and advocacy every day. I don't care how many likes your company has. It's not an opt-in. It's not a permission-based marketing community. A like is a click. A moment in time where I express as an individual that I like you. I am not asking you to sell to me or market to me, but I would if you clearly articulated the value in doing so. I'd do much more than just like you. Without relevance, without competing for relevance, we actually risk what I refer to as digital Darwinism. That is, when society and technology evolve faster than our ability to adapt. What does adapt mean? Adapt means change. It means people and processes and governance and philosophy where if you are in this room today because you believe that social media is important to your business, then leave here today trying to change your business. We're not going to get anywhere as a social media expert, but we will get everywhere as a change agent because that's what it takes. This is a time for introspection. This is not a time to look at what everybody else is doing. We could be inspired by what everybody else is doing, but we have to look at our customers and what we want from them. It is not going to be because we merely stick these things everywhere that digital has to offer. Follow me on Twitter. Check in here on Foursquare. I saw that the number of hands in this room is great for the marketing representatives here today. And that's wonderful. Marketing is among the earliest adopters of social media within the organization. Thank you for getting your company to pay attention. But now you have a greater task. Marketing is just the beginning. As Karl-Heinz said, this is about a service. This is about competing for relevance. This is about the idea of the human algorithm where your company cares enough to change, so someone within the organization is going to have to get the rest of the company to care. Not only am I an analyst, but I'm an aspiring sociologist and anthropologist and psychologist. I believe that the social sciences are so important today. Somebody has to look at how human behavior is changing so that we can reverse engineer it to take data and apply meaningful services and bridge the gap between how customers use social networks and mobile and how you think they do. As I was writing the book, which this afternoon hopefully you can get a copy for the great price of free, I had found that we have different types of customer segments, and I'm not talking about demographics, where we say I'm trying to reach women 25 to 34 or men 17 to 25. I'm talking about behavioral segments, where you have the traditional customer, the customer who is quite content with watching television, reading newspapers and magazines. They are influenced, believe it or not, by the advertisements that they see, the advertisements that they see outside. They're really not going to change that much. And our business is structured to reach them today. Over the last 20 years, we got to know the digital consumer. This is someone who lives on the web. This is someone who starts their search in Google. They're starting to play around with social networks. But the one that we really need to pay attention to is what I refer to as the connected consumer. And how they discover, how they learn, how they share, how they communicate, how they connect is not at all like the other two. Your business is not structured for this third. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is how do you compete for relevance with a customer that you don't even know? As Karl-Heinz showed, this is not phone anymore. It's funny, if you watched that movie recently, the 21 Jump Street, there's a scene where Jonah Hill, it's actually one of the only funny scenes in the movie, where Jonah Hill calls this girl in high school that he really likes. And she picks up the phone and she has this strange look on her face. She says, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm calling you." She says, "I don't talk on this thing, I text." And it's so true. And it's a fundamental shift in behavior that we need to pay attention to, because how they learn, how they're influenced is different. It is their window to the world, and they are in control. You'll hear about Gen Y. You'll now start to hear about Gen Z, which is 8 to 12 years old. And they are responsible, by the way, for anywhere between $30 and $1 billion in spending. Probably the most sophisticated consumer you will ever face. But what they all share is this idea of connectedness. And this, I refer to them as Gen Z. It's going to be hard to market to Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen X, boomers, matures. But if we can start to group them by behavior, we can be a little bit more successful. It's this idea of connectedness that puts them at the center of what I call the ecosystem, the center of their own universe. They make the world revolve around them, literally. And how we market to them was like this. You're an audience, I'm a brand, and I'm talking at you. How antisocial is that? But in reality, this is your new customer. They are always on, they're always connected. And even this picture, I laugh because even this picture looks old, right? Because now today would be all iPads. But the reality is that they're always on. How many of you are on Twitter right now? Wow, all right. I better say good things then. That is the idea of what your marketing efforts look like. You are trying to compete for attention for somebody who is in the same room, but they're also engaged. It's like watching television. They are engaged with their community. And if I were a brand, if I were a business, I could get very upset. I could say, why is my audience, why aren't my customers paying attention to me? They're always distracted. That's the old mentality of business. Instead, I could say, I know you're going to be online. I know you're going to be connected right here, right now. And as a marketer, the best thing I could do is try to talk to you and through you at the same time. So that changes everything. That changes my philosophy. That changes my processes. That changes how I present to you. No slide can be greater than 140 characters. I had to relearn how to talk to you. Businesses have to relearn how to talk to customers. In the end, we are the very people that we're trying to reach. I can't think of any better image to show you how connected the connected consumer is than this picture. It's an app that turns the camera on your phone so that you can type while you're walking and not hit anything. Saves lives. That is the visualization of what we're trying to compete for. So why should I stop what I'm doing to pay attention to you? As Connie shared, well, KLM did a great way of doing that because they put you at the center of their business. So how we're structured around the sales funnel, my goodness. If I thought the MacBook picture was old, how old does this look now? I've studied this. I have a whole chapter dedicated to this in the book, where the journey of today's customer, of your connected customer, never ends. It's an ellipse. The most important aspect that I need you to pay attention to is the center. It's the influence loop. When someone begins a search for a product, when they're ready to consider a product, they take it to the public. They use apps. They share it in social networks. They want feedback. They read your opinions. They read your blog posts. They watch YouTube videos. And everything about it is joined by one thing: shared experiences. If you begin a search, you are influenced by those shared experiences. If you make a decision, you start to share those experiences. It's a never-ending well of information where big data isn't just about the social graph. Big data is about how people experience you and how you can improve those experiences. If we are competing for relevance, there can be no awareness, there can be no consideration if you are not on their dashboard. As I was writing the book talking about how people take to the public to make decisions about purchases, somebody tweeted this at me. I don't make decisions without my tweeps. It's like a posse. It's a group buying power. But now individuals are being encouraged for their influence. While I don't necessarily agree that this is an influence score, people do believe that it is an indication of status. And companies are using this, for example, in social CRM. They can tell the clout score of their customer to determine the type of service that they should give someone. But think about the experience that you give your customers today, and think about what that experience should look like when you leave this conference. One of the greatest travesties in marketing is this, the QR code. Such a promising technology. Yet when you scan it, it takes you to a website. Most of the times it won't even load on a mobile phone because it wasn't optimized for mobile devices. Sometimes it takes you to an advertisement. But if you look at American Express and how they're engaging customers, where we'll say, look, regardless of device, regardless of technology, we're going to reward you for sharing with people what you love most. They're starting to build an infrastructure around each one of you. That took a whole back end. That took a change in processes. That took someone going back to say, you know what, how we're thinking about social media, our Facebook strategy, our Twitter strategy is not enough. Because that connected consumer is empowered. They're making decisions with or without you. They're making decisions for or against you without even your knowledge. Let me give you an example of why you must be a change agent. In the United States, we have a retail store for electronics called Best Buy. Best Buy is considered to be the standard of excellence for retailing and also at a time for social media. But let me give you this example. I do this all the time. Most people who have a smartphone do this all the time, where they'll scan a barcode to check for the best price, to check for reviews. And what they do with that is very important. But in the Best Buy example, they will go to customer service to say, I found this product for less. Here. Can you match the price? And the clerk says, I cannot match the price. We only match printed advertisements. Oh, you have a printer? If it's that easy, allow me to print this. I'm sorry. So what happens? The customer leaves. They will drive up to 12 miles to save a few dollars. Because the policy didn't change for a modern type of consumer. It's that broken. That's what we're changing, is the philosophy, the mindset, because how they're making decisions today is unbelievable. So unbelievable, this is actually a funny example, that retailers are putting the number of likes for articles of clothing on the hanger. It's a matter of time until you see iPads above each article of clothing, where you can see which of your friends liked that outfit. Because the way that the connected customer sees the world is like this. It's the merging between virtual, digital, and reality. They're always seeing what they could scan, what they could take a picture of, where they could check in, what they could like. And now Google is trying to bring that to life through Google Glass, where you can look like this, but be so productive and mobile at the same time. But just to give you an idea of just how different your marketing is, why it is the end of marketing as usual, is this simple graphic. The blue line are people who visit websites. It's the overall growth of the internet. It's still growing. The bottom line is the orange, which represents social networking. That too is growing. The difference between these two lines is the fundamental difference in your marketing and overall business strategy. The top line means you still have to make people find you. It is the destination web. People will find you. The bottom are people who expect you to come to them. It's very different. And if you think about the approach, can't hit both at the same time with just one marketing campaign. You have to hit both simultaneously because their attention is focused exactly where it needs to be, on the relevant information in front of them. And if you think about social networks, it's the same thing. Their eyeballs are focused only on their social streams. And when it comes to shared experiences, people can share how wonderful you are. That influence loop, that influences the decisions of everybody else. The big cloud, the big index of your brand is defined not by your marketing campaign, but by people's experiences with your products. The future of marketing is going to be driven by designing those experiences first, then marketing second. Meaning, what experience do you want people to share? Because right now, this is a cable company in the United States. As I was writing the book, I had found this service called Grooble. It's a social index for the satisfaction of companies around the world. It's brilliant. It measures sentiment in real time and gives an index of how happy or unhappy people are with your business. You can do the same thing with the data at hand. MicroStrategy has some of the most sophisticated and easy-to-use tools on this front. So I looked at, why is Time Warner on the top of this list? Oh, here's why. Because people hate you. It was a real-time screen capture that I fed into a cloud. And so I took a look at their website to say, well, wait a minute. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Is this how the company markets itself? No, not at all. Sucks. some other words that I won't say, versus innovation. It's a little bit of a gap. So your brand, as Connie has said, is not what you say, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. That takes design, that takes architecture. And this, I believe, is where the future of co-creation begins. How we use information, how we use data to not just personalize service, but build a better service that can come at a premium, where you can connect the dots between the experience you want, the experience that representatives give or your campaigns give, and the experience people have, and lastly and most importantly, the experience people share. When I wrote Engage, my motto was engage or die. If you don't engage your customers in social networks, you will die. It's true. Then it was adapt or die. You must adapt to how customers are changing. And I realized, you know what, that's not enough. If you adapt, then you're always reacting. Information now gives you the ability to lead the customer experience, to improve products and services internally so that you matter. Because connected consumerism is linked by shared experiences. So what we start to talk about now is the development of a social business where marketing as a service is not just marketing as a service. Marketing is an extension of a greater philosophy within your organization, meaning you care, and it shows through everything. Yet, if I look at most organizations today, this is kind of what it looks like. Walls around everything, walls around everybody. And we're trying to change to be more customer-centric, yet we still have to deal with the everyday reality that people just don't talk to each other. There's a gentleman by the name whom I admire very much. His name is Jesse James Garrett. He's the co-founder of Adaptive Path and one of the leading minds on user experience design. He said that user experience team had learned so much about customers during their research that they found flaws in the product, they found flaws in customer service, and they wanted to improve those. They couldn't because they didn't know or have ever talked to anyone in the customer service department. That's where this change begins. And it's not going to take Yammer, it's not going to take Socialcast or any other enterprise social network to fix the problem. It's going to take you to lead change from within. The future of co-creation, the future of innovation, the future of customer centricity requires that you invest in a culture that supports it. This is the reality. People are more comfortable with the way things are, the way that they could be. There are so many reasons for change. The first, of course, is because people are changing. The second is that these networks, these new behaviors, they open up new touch points for you to engage, for you to reach, for you to learn from. But none of this matters if you're not willing to change as an organization. I know that we have a representative from Dell speaking later, but I thought these words from Michael Dell were quite appropriate for today. You have a well of information that you can plug into, and it gives you a great gift. It's a gift of empathy. You cannot help but care when you learn and you listen. You're inspired to do something greater. You look at Steve Jobs, and he will always be remembered as being one of the greatest business leaders of our time. But he won't necessarily be remembered for one of his greatest talents, and that is he was one of the best user experience designers of our time. He cared about how you went through life. He cared about how you used something to do something. He cared. So you leave here today on a path, not a sociopath. Either you leave as a social media expert or you leave as a change agent. I believe that all of this information, all of this data can be best applied when you can actually make a difference within the organization. So before I leave, I want to leave you with some things that change how you work, that change how your business works. And it starts with openness, having an open mind. If you think back to empathy, it's a show in the United States that I can't help but watch, and it inspired a chapter in the book. It's called Undercover Boss. I'm not sure if you've seen this show. It's a great show, mostly because what happens to every boss in every episode is the thing that we had always wished our boss would go through. And that is, they have to live for a week in disguise as an employee of the company or as a customer of the company. And they have to go through things the way that your employees and your customers do every day. The thing that they learn along the way is that, especially as taking on different jobs within the company, is that they're horrible at these jobs. Some of them actually get fired, which is quite brilliant. And at the end of the week, there's this great reveal. Surprise, it was me, ha ha ha. But what ends up happening is more important. The ending is always the same. Everybody cries. They cry because that's a sign of empathy. Because for the first time, they felt what it was like to not be the executive. And the first thing they say after that is, I can't believe I had lost touch with the very thing that drives this business. Things are going to change, and they do. But that's what this information is giving us. You don't have to disrupt your executives' lives to change how you work. To add a different layer in between you and your customers that takes in information, but also allows for transformation within. What are you solving for? What is the problem that your customers have? What is the problem that you have? This is a great question to answer because most social media and most marketing strategies don't start with this question. This is why you get a great disconnect. There's survey after survey that shows customers, what do you want from social networks? Executives, what do you think they want from social networks? And it's always like this. What are you solving for? Because that's where all of this begins. It's the idea that you can improve on something that may not be broken. Fear is your greatest enemy. Skepticism is its friend. So the two things that I face every day, I have to design frameworks and processes and ROI calculations to get over fear and skepticism. But that's what we all have to do. But other businesses are doing it. Virgin, a brand that we all know, when they launched an airline in the United States, they did so as a startup. They started from scratch. They didn't just say, we're going into a new market. They stepped back and they said, what are we trying to solve for? Why does the world need another airline? Because we all know flying sometimes is not the best experience. So they looked at what was important to customers. Number one, the most important thing is that they want to feel valued. That's what it means when they expect to be king or queen. It just means that they want to be valued as a customer, which, by the way, is pretty sad when you think about it. Every time a company like KLM or Dell or Comcast use customer service successfully, social media successfully to improve customer problems, it's written about in the news. Headline: this company helped people. And that's news. It should have always been the case. But somehow, some way, when companies looked at how to invest in technology to improve customer relationships, they actually increased the distance between people in the organization and the people they're trying to reach. Just think about a call center. If you've ever had a problem and you've ever had to call customer service, you probably have not left that experience with a great big smile. That's what we're trying to fix. Feeling valued is the most important thing to a customer. How it is your social media experience. How do you take data to learn what value means? The second, I won't go through all six, but the second I want to share with you is efficiency. Meaning, if they come to you on a phone, if they come to you on a tablet, if they come to you from a desktop, or if they see you in the real world, they want that experience to be integrated and efficient. And lastly is this idea of what Martha's going to talk about tomorrow around trust. They have to trust you. One of the things that you learn about when you study the behavior of Generation Z, which applies to Generation C, sorry to confuse you with all these letters, but they don't want to buy a product. They want to buy an experience. They want to use your product, your company, as an extension of who they are. Sounds rather selfish, but it's true. You become part of their identity. They must trust you. One of the greatest trends that we'll see from here on forward, and it's actually going to be the focus of a lot of my work, is around the experience. Starbucks just hired, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, a chief digital officer. Yes, I know, the first thing we think of is another CXO. But I like this one. I like this one because they realize it's not just about social media. It's not just about web marketing. It's not just about email marketing. It's not just about in-store experiences. It's about an integrated experience. Like Burgeon had found, it needs to be integrated, efficient, holistic, and it needs to convey the experience you want people to have. This person's job is now to design that experience for Starbucks, meaning if you were going to say something about Starbucks, what would you say? That's his job to define and to bring it to life now through products, services, through social media, through mobile. It had to become a priority for the organization. They're not the only ones. Sephora just did the same thing. They're putting people in charge of architecting experiences. Right now, it's mostly through technology. Eventually, they will understand that they can also add to what you think or feel. Let me give you an example. One of the things that I still hear today, the concerns of social media, number one is that it's a fad, but number two is that it's a loss of control. That executives feel that social media gives people the ability to talk badly about them. The revelation, of course, that I have to share with every executive is that social media did not invent conversations. Social media did not invent opinions. People always talked about you. You didn't have control. You could market at them. You could hope that that impression would stick. But at the end of the day, they would still share what they thought. I believe social media and information now gives you control. The control to know what people think, and the control to start to shape or improve how people experience you. So there are 10 steps that I want to leave you with. These are 10 steps that I believe you should focus on over the next year or two. Start to set the foundation for changing the culture of the organization. Because if you do not follow these 10 steps, no matter how brilliant your social media strategy is, no matter how you take data and apply it internally, it's always going to get stuck somewhere in the organization. Marketing as a service is now greater than marketing as a department. Marketing as a service is the entire organization. It is an orchestra, and you are its conductor. The first step is to believe that you are the champion. Often I hear, well, that's not my job. I've got enough to do on my plate. Why should I take something else on? I think the only answer I can give you is because you care. Hopefully you're ambitious. Hopefully you're creative. But in the end, you have to be a champion. Somebody's got to be a champion for this. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen is you're going to use all of this data. You're going to come up with some of the greatest social media strategies, and you're going to trigger a great unlike or unfollow movement because people just started to get tired of the reality that you were still using new technologies, social technologies, to market at them, to talk at them, instead of engage them. I wish that this would be a memo that I would read, but I wrote it just in case you want to slip one under your executive's door and make them believe that they could write it and send it to the company. The key is not to be afraid, right? This is a time to try new things. If you are not innovating, if you are not adapting, then by default, you are contributing not to relevance, but irrelevance. You are actually trying not to be relevant. And that's what a lot of businesses are doing today. The second thing you need to do is really understand what are your internal capabilities for becoming a social business, for becoming a business that's capable of engaging, innovating, learning, adapting. You're going to have roadblocks. You're going to have hurdles. You can't do this alone. You have to understand who the people are within your organization, even if they're a roadblock, so that you can start to break through them. The next thing you need to do is do what I did. Research your customers. Look at how they're behaving, how they're sharing, what they're talking about, what they like, what they dislike. How are they connecting? How much time are they spending on Facebook per week? The answer is different for every single one of your customers. I do this every week. I study for businesses that journey, all of the touch points. It's all available because it's public data. It's one of the reasons why I like MicroStrategy's tools, because it makes sense. You have to understand this, because without this information, when your executives or anybody within your organization says, well, why do we need to change? How exactly are our customers changing so much that we have to change our business? Oh, well, here's how. And to what extent? Suddenly you have information, and information, remember, is a currency. You have to bring customers into your organization, whether it's through information or whether it's through co-creation, to do something specifically as a pilot. Do something small. Don't try to change the entire company overnight. Show how engaging customers or learning from customers in something in particular is going to have an impact in your company so you can demonstrate success. Is it for product refinement? Is it for co-creating the next marketing campaign or the next product? Is it for solving a problem? Test and learn. Start small. Prove value. Select the tools that are going to help you in this particular pilot. Don't just make sweeping investments across the board. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a mission. You then have to establish the rules of engagement. Most companies that I know will write a playbook for social media. They'll write policies and guidelines for social media. And a lot of them have words that say things like, use common sense. Yet someone will take that playbook and go and share a company secret on Twitter. Just attended this product meeting for this new product that we're launching next month. I'm so excited. To them, that was common sense because they really were excited. What we're talking about is writing governance, creating an infrastructure, a series of processes that allow you to help people do their job better. Specifically, here's how to use this stuff to improve what you are going to do. It has to be that specific because otherwise people leave it to their own devices. One of the greatest things about change is this idea of transparency. If you look at some of the best examples for co-creation out there, for example, My Starbucks Idea, or Dell's Idea Storm, or P&G's creative program where they were trying to solve a wrinkle problem in a particular cotton, and they allowed people to suggest innovations, and it turned out that a gentleman who's a professor at a university had been working on something in his garage that could solve the problem. The companies in each one of those cases say, here's what we heard. We hear you. Here's how we're changing, or here's how we changed, or here's how what you said led to a new product. When we talk about two-way conversation, it's not just about, hey, I love you. Hey, thanks, I love you back. Or, hey, I hate your service. I'm sorry, what could we do? It's about showing how you changed over time. That's transparency. And then your job is to start to use all of this information to get in front of all of this activity. What are people doing? What are people saying? How is it evolving? And how do we get in front of it? How do we start to define where they're going to go? Because otherwise, we're forever reacting. Second to last, and this is most important, they don't just want to feel like they're your king or queen. They want to be rewarded for it, right? Think about it for a moment. Kings and queens, what do they all share besides power and crowns? The idea of privilege. And that is what this is about. People should be feeling privileged to do business with you. If you look at Apple, people feel privileged to pay 2 times more for a laptop than they should. They join the club. But in all reality, American Express is probably one of the best examples out there for social CRM and for rewarding its customers. Not only was it the Twitter marketing example that I showed, but look up link, like, love at some point today. It's a whole infrastructure where they take information and your American Express rewards points and start to feed you personalized opportunities to get rewarded for what you say in social networks, for what you do, or to just spend your points on things that it knows you like because it developed an infrastructure around that. But either way, if we want people to talk about us, number one, we have to give them something exceptional to talk about. Number two, we have to reward them because their time is valuable. And to them, their time is more valuable than ours. I'm not going to argue with it. Instead, I'm going to reward it. As Gandhi once said, become the change you want to see. This holds true, and these are actually the words that inspire me on a daily basis. Because change is not easy. I have a lot of bald spots from tearing out my hair with conversations that I have with executives. Because change is not supposed to be easy. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a champion or if I'm a politician with all the conversations I have to have within organizations to try to get this person to see things differently and this person to talk to this person. But that's what we have to do. But you can't do it alone. If you hear the words center of excellence, you'll often hear about it in social media these days where the company builds a resource center to empower its employees to get on Twitter and Facebook, to learn more about social networks. Yet, when you start to study what's at the center of this center of excellence, you start to see things that don't match up to business objectives, that don't truly match up to what Karl-Heinz talked about. What I'm talking about is how to make your business matter to customers. You see it propagating the same problems over and over again. Here's how to use Twitter. Here's how to use Facebook. Here's what to say. Here's what not to say. But it doesn't necessarily say, here's how to use social media to improve customer relationships and experiences. That's what the center of excellence needs to be. It must be the center of changing the culture, the changing the philosophy or the outlook of the business. So you need to put on a special task force, or as a company called Aramark, 250,000 employee, business to business called it, social delegates, where it took representatives from its lines of business, one person from each line of business, and one person from each function, legal, finance, human resources, and they formed the social delegates to bring about change within the company because they all worked together to convince executives that our customers are changing and we, if we don't change, are going to be out of business in 10 years. And going through steps 1 through 9, they were able to make that case. They did their homework. And I should tell you that they came to me at the beginning and said, we need your help developing a social media marketing strategy. I said, why? Well, everybody's doing it. I said, but have you thought about your business and specifically your customers and your customers' customers on why this would matter? Let me give you an example. Let's say someone does this and they experience this and it's a problem for this. What and how does that get to you? And how does it get back out? And they didn't have an answer. And so they spent took a while, 14 months, assembling all of these things. Now the company has an entire infrastructure, not just for social media, but for digital, for innovation, for adaptation, where now they can say, what's our social media strategy? Here it is. And more importantly, how does this social media strategy align with our business objectives? Here's how. And before I leave, I'll leave you with the words that inspired this slide. And actually inspired the 10 steps. It was a senior executive, second in command at this company, that said to me, you know, everybody is talking about social media inside our company. And of course, everybody's coming to me for budget and resources for social media. And I tell everybody the same thing. I say, if you come to me looking for money and help for social media, my answer is just going to be no. But if you take the time, steps 1 through 9, if you take the time and you come to me and you say, look, I understand that these are our business objectives, whether it's at the top line level of the company or within your work group or your department or your line of business. If you come to me and you say that I understand our business objectives and here's how social media will help us advance those business objectives, I will give you budget and resources. Because his words were, social media, mobile, local, technology, big data, all of these things must be an enabler of something else. So what is that something else? As Karl-Heinz asked, what does that like mean? And once you can answer that, you can start to bring about change within the company. Because this is what it's about. This is a time where we are responsible for the change that we want. We are actually responsible for changing our organization or any organization we work with to be better, to be more customer-centric, to be more employee-centric, to care enough to change, to be visionary enough to see what change looks like, to create meaningful and shareable experiences. It's a time for those who can see what others don't and those who will do what others will not. And that's why I believe we're here today. Because we are those individuals within the companies that we work for because we think things are going to be better if we can engage with our customers and our employees. And we're here to learn how to do it. So my final words to you are, this is your time. Thank you so much.
Brian, one last...